Hey, what's up? It's Bond, and today I want to talk about Dragon's Dogma 2 and why it actually has me more excited for Dragon Age Dreadwolf. Good luck mixing those up all year. Before we get into that, if you like Dragon's Dogma 2, if you like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, BioWare, games in general, please consider subscribing to this channel. Hit the like button if you like this video and leave a comment down below with what you think. If you really want to support this video, my other videos, my podcast, my stream, please consider becoming a YouTube member. One of the big perks is that you do get these videos early and you get a cool little badge beside your name when you comment. So there's that. Okay, so getting into the video, I am about 40-ish hours into Dragon's Dogma 2. I'm into the final area. I've done most of the side missions that I'm aware of, at least, and I'm probably done. I don't plan on finishing the game. What always symbolizes this to me is when I find myself too tempted to not look up endings on YouTube. If there's a game I'm really enjoying and I'm really excited to see the ending of, I won't do that. I'll avoid spoilers at all possible. Sometimes it's even happened where I have looked up the endings and been like, oh, that looks great. Like, I want to experience that, especially if it's a game with like multiple endings or variable endings. I was like, I want to experience that with my character, in this case, pawn and stuff like that. And I just don't have that anymore. I've gotten my money's worth out of the game. I made a video a week or two about this, and I think I like Dragon's Dogma 2 generally. I just feel like everything about it is just not done or not fleshed out. I caught a stray on Reddit from someone who so apparently went and watched my video about it and said I only talked about stealth in that last video, and that was just an example. The way I feel about the stealth in the game, where it's technically there, but it's terribly implemented to the point where it's like bad. It's embarrassing. That's how I feel about most of the major systems in the game. So my issue in that video and even today wasn't that that's the only problem or that I didn't talk about the rest of the game. My issue is that the stealth system in Dragon's Dogma 2, the issues with it are the same issues I have with every other mechanic in the game. Nothing feels fleshed out. Honestly, nothing feels finished. Besides maybe the combat. I would say the combat is the one big thing in the game that feels like they, fully implemented. It's also basically exactly the same as the first game, and it's actually missing things. So, we'll move on from that. But why am I more excited about Dragon Age Dreadwolf now than I was before? There's a few reasons. I was able to stick with Dragon's Dogma for quite a while. These high fantasy medieval set games, the aesthetic of that, it's just not my thing. I really don't like it. I'm someone who famously, to myself, I guess, doesn't like The Witcher 3. There's lots of reasons I don't like it. One of them being that setting. I can't. I actually didn't even like Dragon Age Inquisition at the time when I've played it, because it's just not really my thing. I'm not really into it. But that may have changed a little bit for me. It started last year with Baldur's Gate 3. Obviously, it's a very different type of game. It's the different type of action. It's got the turn-based combat and things like that. The big thing for me being that the characters and the interactions and the reactivity of the world are just so good. It even made me kind of start to enjoy a turn-based game, which I never have in my entire life. I've never enjoyed any turn-based game ever. Not one. And so, while it turned me on to turn-based, I also have a feeling it's kind of turned me on to the more high fantasy setting and things like that, because that didn't immediately turn me off about Dragon's Dogma. Now, one thing I do like about Dragon's Dogma is that while it is high fantasy set in a medieval time, they don't let it be, it's not like too silly, like it kind of is in a way, but they've definitely tried to keep it like somewhat grounded in a lot of ways, which I appreciate. But as I played Dragon's Dogma 2, I thought so much about how, like, other RPGs recently. Obviously, Baldur's Gate 3 being a masterpiece, but even Starfield, a game which has got mixed reactions, right? And it's definitely, for one reason or another, it's a whole different video, has kind of leaned negative since its release. My hot take would be that Starfield is a 10 times better game than Dragon's Dogma 2, because while it has similar issues where parts of it feel extremely dated, parts of it feel not very well fleshed out, I think it just does it does at least some of the RPG things better, even if they're not the best, right? So I would argue that the reactivity of the Starfield world is better than Dragon's Dogma. I would argue that the conversations and the interactions with NPCs and your followers and stuff like that is better in Starfield. It's not great, let me be very clear, but I do think it's better. And so when I started thinking about it that way, I started to realize that, well, looking at Dragon Age Inquisition, seeing some of the rumors we've heard about Dreadwolf, it really seems like there's a really good chance that, one, I'm going to be more tolerable of the setting. High fantasy, middle-aged kind of things. Medieval, right? And the rumor is that the combat of Dreadwolf at least has appeared to be something closer to like a God of War, or something that is different than Inquisition. That I would argue the combat in Inquisition is just kind of bad. Like, my current self would actually prefer a straight up turn-based combat game than what Inquisition was, right? But if that's a big change, if that's a big factor in the next game for Dreadwolf, I have no doubt that the reactivity of the world is going to be there. I have no doubt that the romances are going to be at least better than Dragon's Dogma and Starfield. It's going to be hard to hit that Baldur's Gate 3 mantle, but maybe up to that standard. I have faith that the NPCs, the interactivity, things like that, are going to be at a level that's better than Dragon's Dogma, a game I've enjoyed, even if it doesn't quite meet Baldur's Gate 3, a game which I think is almost impossible to attain unless you're Larian, in their very specific way of making games, right? In their situation being independent but well-funded and so on and so forth. So I've like slowly been developing, especially as I assume we get announcements about Dreadwolf coming up. I've been slowly like, ooh, okay, like the pieces are coming together for me to maybe really be a big Dreadwolf fan if it does the things I think it's going to do. I'm a little concerned about Dreadwolf having issues with feeling dated because it's been in development for so long. I'm a little concerned that, these games that tend to seem to get rebooted and are in development for a long time, you would assume everything would be super polished and fully fleshed out and all that, and hopefully that's true. But sometimes because things have been rebooted, while the game may have been in development for 6-7 years, many features of the game may be fairly new, right? Maybe they aren't finished, they aren't fleshed out, they aren't tuned right. So we'll see. But I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to be excited, right? That game, I'm expecting Dreadwolf this year, probably late 2024. And I really think I have to thank Baldur's Gate 3 and even Dragon's Dogma 2, a game that I enjoy, but I'm probably done with, for bringing that to me. Even if Dreadwolf isn't a perfect game, even if it's not Game of the Year, right? I still am happy that organically 2 games, which I would put on pretty different ends of the spectrum, have kind of convinced me like, hey, maybe your prejudices, maybe your opinions on this type of game were wrong. And it just took a couple games that, whether they're really, really good or not, to kind of finesse me into like, maybe this is a genre you're interested in. It has made me consider looking at some other ones. We'll see. When it comes to Baldur's Gate, I'm sad that they're not making more content for that, but I'll probably play that game casually forever in some capacity. Dragon's Dogma 2, if they put out a DLC, I would actually probably start a brand new character and start from scratch, knowing what I know now, and knowing what I can skip and that, so on and so forth. And then, Dragon Age Dreadwolf, just really excited. Obviously, also excited to see where BioWare is at in 2024. While I am not one that really thinks that whatever happens with Dreadwolf is completely reflective of BioWare in the next Mass Effect because of its situation. I still just am kind of curious to what kind of product they put out in the year of 2024, hopefully. So that's just kind of my spiel. I'm curious to what you think. Please let me know in the comments how you're feeling about Dreadwolf or Dragon's Dogma or Baldur's Gate. You can give me all of your Baldur's Gate 3 ruined me comments, because as much as I can't stand that sentiment, I'm actually starting to kind of agree with it reluctantly. So let me hear from you. I'm curious to what you think. As we get more info about Dreadwolf, I do plan on talking about it quite a bit more. And if we get some more info about Dragon's Dogma with DLC and stuff, I'll talk about that as well. So that's all I have for this one. So until next time.